feeling, a great feeling from Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey in the morning makes me feel alive. Woke me up this morning, now I'm up and on my way. Oh, 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 yeah, what a great way to start your day, the Lakey way.
Well, top of the morning to everybody out there. Tuesday, the 23rd day of September, year of our Lord, 2025. Glad to have you here. All across America, people are getting a little notification on their phones, on the Facebook, on the Twitter, on the X, on the Rumbles. Lakey is unleashed, and that's where it's at. By the way, I haven't explained in a while. If you're new to the program, don't forget to use the hashtag Lakey Unleashed. We call it Lakey Unleashed for a reason. Years and years and years, I sat behind microphones doing morning drive, primarily radio, and filling in on a couple of big shows, my couple of little small shows, and I was in the bonds of corporate radio. Well, last November, I was unleashed from the bonds of corporate radio, and now here we are together in our own entrepreneurial effort, and I wear blue shirts. So I always wear blue shirts, but you didn't know it because I was on the radio. You were just attracted to my voice, but now you get the whole thing, including the blue shirts. You do. All right, news stories to get to. We're going to dive into it. The FBI looking at the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We teased on that yesterday. Jimmy Kimmel's coming back on television tonight. Aren't you excited? I'm sure you've set your listening appointment to him. The Kirk Memorial, I want to approach this. I was watching a little bit of it yesterday, and I still want to go back and watch one speech that I did not pay that close attention to, but I thought it was one of those powerful, was Marco Rubio, really winding up a stem winder of his sermon, and I want to go back and watch that. But I was watching some yesterday, and I started watching it not just from the spiritual perspective and the memorial perspective and the conservative impact, but just the planning that went into that event. Again, most of you might not know that the reason Lakey has the Lakey Entertainment Towers and Cigar Palace, and we always say broadcasting for the Lakey Entertainment Towers, is I built a I was in the Christian music industry. I was in the concert and event planning departments of. I ran these things. I put these things together, and the fact that they put that together, and I'll get into the details of it, in such short notice was nothing less than miraculous and spectacular. So we'll talk about that perspective on this thing as well. Conservatives continue to bicker on who's the, Megyn Kelly, you got Candace Owens. That's going to die down, and we'll get to that a little bit as well. Secret Service has announced this morning that in New York City, they have dismantled a telecom thread that basically were cloned. It was something technological, so we'd need an expert to explain it, but I'll get the details of it. They basically could have shut down mobile phone and phone communication, not just in New York City, but other places, and they're not saying whether it was tied to President Trump's visit today to the United Nations, but the Secret Service was onto it, been investigating it since the spring. Also, we will get into the roadmap to stop autism. Not to autism, but to stop autism. But Health and Human Services came out yesterday and issued some guidance. President Trump issued some guidance on acetaminophen, which the brand name is under Tylenol, but said, hey, the way that you're a pregnant woman and you're not supposed to have sushi, you might want not to have Tylenol if you can at all avoid it, or acetaminophen. And they say there are some studies, it's a Harvard study, that looked at all the research that have ever been done on this and said, there may be something to this. It's not the linchpin here that they're going to stop it, but they say there's something to consider, that maybe moms taking acetaminophen unnecessarily for every fever they have when they're pregnant, then maybe that's not a good thing. Also, unhinged Democrats. I know that's shocking. Democrats are unhinged. Keith Olbermann, remember him? He used to be a NFL or a sports broadcaster on ESPN. Now he's just a lonely old hack in his basement. He's threatening Scott Jennings on CNN. Says, well, "You're next, mother effer." That's Olbermann. It's not just, my friends. It's not just the Jasmine Crockett's and the AOC. These people are truly unhinged, and they need an exorcism. I literally mean that. By the way, we've got a great guest on the program. He's been scheduled, couldn't come on last week, and I think you'll understand why. But I believe he's coming on at 8:45 this morning, so just after Laura Carno. He's been making the rounds of all the big-time shows. Today he hits a small-town show. It's my show. His name is Lucas Miles, and he happens to be the senior director of Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA Faith Organization. So you kept hearing over the weekend that Turning Point USA had not just did politics and the campus things, but they had a whole faith division where churches can sign up and kind of they can connect everybody together with common values. Lucas Miles is going to be on the show. He is, again, the senior director of the Turning Point USA Faith Organization. You don't want to miss that. And he's written this book here called, it just came out. It's called Pagan Threat: Confronting America's Godless Uprising. And I hate to say it, but you just call it like you see it. You could probably say this is a lot related to godless uprising. That's the kind of crap you're going to get from Keith Olbermann threatening CNN. All right, good to have all of you here on the show. Everybody's ready for a big-time program? Let's do it. I'm shaking the table, shaking the cameras. I apologize for that. Producer Chad will flog me apparently very, very soon. We got a question of the day, then let's dive into the news. Ready for the question of the day, or as we call it, the QOD? You ready for the QOD? The QOD started yesterday. Producer Chad showed that Marty McFly, back in the days of Back to the Future, people were going to want to head back to the 80s, the same way they headed back to the 50s. We're going to head back to the 80s. And I get all these Instagram AI posts that said, hey, guys, welcome to the 80s. Come on back with us. How is it? And they're really kind of cool because they take on a flashback of how in the 80s, everybody's grandma had that couch, that sofa that had all the flowers and farm scenes on it. Everybody had some kind of a bright Tupperware thing going on in their kitchen. I mean, just the carpeting, the console televisions, all the things that no matter where you were in the 80s, everything was kind of the same. We all had the same, somebody had the same clock radio as you in your home, and that was what you had. You had the same Walkman. You had the same little hand. I mean, there was just so many things that were just, it was humanity. It was America in the 80s. And I want to ask you a question. Which one is your favorite? What is the most nostalgia that when you think back to the 80s, what are you thinking about? Maybe you're thinking about the Aquanet and the big hair. It depends on what part of the 80s. Are you thinking of the hair bands? Are you thinking the life without cell phones? If you could go back and live out a part of the 80s, would it be having just 3 television channels? Maybe you were a rich kid and you got the cable television, but a lot of times you just had the 3, maybe you had a couple of television stations, a couple of UHF stations. What are the things of the 80s that you most fondly remember, and or the things that are most nostalgic for you? You can take this question any way you want, but when you think back on the 80s, now, early 80s, I was too young. I was just kind of growing up at that point. By the late 80s and heading into the 90s, I was finishing the high school, going into the college, and boy, I had ideas and visions of what I was going to be and who I was going to do, and not who I was going to do, rephrase that, and who I was going to be and what I was going to do. And then I kind of started paying attention. I wasn't a music guy. Some people may remember the music of the 80s. Producer Chad and I pre-show were talking about Van Halen, and when Sammy Hagar joined that thing in the mid-80s, we were talking about it. I said, I distinctly, when he mentioned that, I remember a conversation among 13, 14-year-old boys saying, did you know they're going to change the whole damn band to Van Hagar? They really are. No, they're not. You're stupid. I remember that conversation. It just popped in when producer Chad mentioned it this morning. I had a flashback to a conversation, and I almost could picture the guys involved. One guy's named Corey, and I don't know who he's talking. I just remember I had this flashback to being a kid again, being 12 or 13 years old, and hearing that, or however, I was early middle school or late middle school, early high school. I remember the conversation, and it was just popped in my head. What are the things that you remember about the 80s the most? You know what I do remember growing up, kind of a nostalgic thing, is I would get home and you had goals because you didn't have streams and you may never get to see an episode. I mean, VCRs were just kind of coming on the scene, and that's usually at your school, right? You didn't have one at home, and if you did, no one knew how to work the damn thing. And so recording a program was hard. It was difficult, at least in my house. I mean, we had the household, when we finally got a VCR, the time always flashed 12 o'clock. We never set it. No one knew how. No one cared. We just would play things, and that's all. You'd rent something at Blockbuster. That's what you do. Friday nights at Blockbuster may be the thing that you remember from the 80s. But I do remember the VHS, and I remember you had to watch your show on time. And Tuesday night, later on, became Thursday night in the '90s for NBC, but ABC had must-see TV in the '80s, and that's when you had your lineup of Happy Days. You had to watch that one. You had to watch the Happy Days. You maybe watch. I don't. Was Laverne and Shirley on next? I don't remember. You had to watch Happy Days. Happy Days. That was getting into the Joni and Chachi era. And that was big time. You had to watch that because everybody was going to do it. Now, if you go to the early '90s, people, the high school kids, were all wanting to see Friends, and that was the big deal. That was when I was heading off to college. Anyway, your favorite memory: the movies? Was it the blockbuster? Was it the music? Was the hair? If you could go back and reminisce accordingly today, or flash back to the past and visit the 1980s, what would it be that you wanted to revisit? What would you live through again and have that nostalgia? What's your favorite thing in the 1980s? That is your question of the day. I remember growing up. This is what I get to the news here. I remember growing up, and we had dress-up day at school. You had the dress-up day, Spirit Day, or whatever you had to do. And we dressed up 1950s. In the 80s, 1950s were a big deal. You would dress up like Arthur Fonzarelli or somebody. The girls would have a poodle skirt. Their mom probably still had one. Because when you were in the 80s, the 1950s seemed like ancient history. I guess I never thought and put the perspective on how not ancient history it was until my son comes home one day, middle school, high school, I don't remember, and he says, "Dad, I've got to dress up. We have dress up day." And in my head, everybody's going to dress up like the 50s, right? I said, "Oh, what are you going to wear? A leather coat and some slick back hair?" He said, "What do you mean, Dad?" I said, "What's a dress up day?" He said, "So we're dressing up 80s day, a long time ago." And I was like, holy crap-a-moly, we have ended up in an era in which, as much as I thought that the 50s were ancient history, my son thinks the 80s are just as much of a history. And so it was funny. I looked and said, wow, the 50s to you and I growing up are the 80s to your kids, or the 90s to your kids growing up. And that's scary that we're getting old. That's what that means. All right, answer of the day, Jeff jumps in here. Giant satellite dishes and laser disc. We're not ready for all of this new technology. Girls actually look good in spandex and bike shorts. Yeah, that was before we had the obesity crisis. That's before you had the people of Walmart websites out there. Yeah, what do we say about yoga pants here on the program? And don't yell at me. I have been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. Yoga pants are a privilege, not a right. Remember that. Those little spandex things you're wearing around there, ladies, you're heading off to the Wally Mart with them. Listen, that is a privilege. It's not a right, and some of you have not earned that privilege. This was, America was healthy back then. We were not the porkers that we are now, and I say that looking at myself going, I've got to keep trimming down. I got to do that. Anyway, well, your question of the day, what's happening with the 80s? All right, let's get into a couple of news stories. Let me give this breaking news story. It's breaking when I first woke up this morning, and the first thing I heard on the news was the Secret Service has dismantled the telecom threat to New York City, and it's technological, but let me just give you the details. The Secret Service is announcing this morning it has dismantled a telecommunications threat near the United Nations General Assembly in New York City. A network of electronic devices throughout the New York's tri-state area was dismantled by the Secret Service. Again, electronic devices throughout the tri-state area were dismantled by the Secret Service. The network was used to conduct multiple telecommunications-related threats directed at senior U.S. government officials. Through the investigation, the agency also discovered more than 300 co-located SIM servers and 100,000 SIM cards across multiple sites. The devices were concentrated within a 35-mile radius of the United Nations General Assembly. The investigation is ongoing. Now, what does all this mean? Well, according to JustTheNews.com, the devices could be used for telecommunications attacks, such as disabling cell phone towers, enabling denial of services attacks, and facilitating anonymous encrypted communication between potential threat actors and criminal organizations. Early analysis indicates there were cellular communications between nation-state threat actors and individuals known to federal law enforcement, and the potential for disruption to the country's entire telecommunications communications network cannot be overstated. This had potential to do that. The United States Secret Service has a mission, they say, and the investigation makes it clear that the potential bad actors, imminent threats to our protectees are immediately being investigated, tracked down, and dismantled. So it's a lot of technological things, but they had enough SIM cards and co-located cell phones that they think they could have shut down the New York region at least, and maybe use that to denial of service. Nobody can call 911. They can communicate. The bad hombres can communicate. So good for Secret Service dismantling what they called an imminent telecom threat in the New York region this morning. Good for them for doing that. Now, here's what I would ask the Secret Service to do. Could you dismantle the cabal that it is still hiding and not giving us the details of what happened July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania? All right, you solved this one. Now, can we go back to Butler, Pennsylvania? We still don't have enough answers on that. Now, I know the FBI is supposedly investigating that, so I guess Secret Service is not. All right, some of you popping in answers of the day. Stacy says teenagers would peg their pants legs. We thought we had style. Love the music. Back to the Future movie. It was the pegging of the pants. Is that where you kind of folded and twisted and rolled them up on your ankle? Is that what this is called? I didn't know. I try not to use the word pegging at all, so I don't know. I don't know what that means. But pegging your pants. You twisted them and rolled them, and they became. It was kind of like instead of skinny jeans, you had skinny ankles. Favorite things from the 80s. Jeff already said Jeff already said that he had the big giant satellites out there. Remember that? All right, good to have you. Most nostalgia from the 80s. I want to talk about Charlie Kirk's memorial. Have you watched that thing and you get inspired and everything they played? Eric Kirk yesterday saying, I forgive that young man. I still got the allergies when I think about it, and a powerful testament and testimony of Christian faith and grace. And that's how our Lord looks at us. And no matter how far we have fallen, no matter what we have done, no matter what sin we might have committed, he has forgiven us. So we just have to accept that forgiveness. So it was the gospel of Jesus Christ demonstrated in front of an entire nation. All right. That said, I got geeked out last night. I just became geeky. Ready? I'm watching some of the Charlie Kirk Memorial, fast forwarding here, seeing some of it, and I'm watching it again. And I started to notice a lot of different things. I noticed that I noticed the big banners hanging up from the rafters. I started to notice that every section had different placard campaign signs that they could hold up. They were all color-coded. I stood, and I noticed this while I watched it originally, the setup, the staging in that football field, that football arena, the staging, the tech company that put all the video, the graphics, the pyrotechnics, everything that was happening there was a massive, massive undertaking. And if you don't know my background, before maybe some of you knew me in the radio world, I had a company called Lakey Entertainment Group. Still do. And Lakey Entertainment Group, we promoted Christian music, managed Christian artists, and we did shows in stadiums. I can think of in the Denver area, all the big arenas here. I think I've done at least 1 to 5 shows in all of them. And I'm talking massive arenas, not even stadiums. These are just arenas that maybe seat 10, 20,000. It's even a bigger thing in a stadium. We didn't do any stadium shows. We did big arena shows. And there is a distinction. But just to pull off a concert of that nature that might actually bring in that production. It's called production. They bring in semi-trucks. You knew going in when you signed a contract to do a show, let's say the Pepsi Center or American Airlines Arena, or wherever you're going to do the show in your town, you have to find the right date. You have to find a date that matches. You have to get the rental cost. You get all these top line numbers, and then you got to put the event together. And there's not like this was a big event. There's very few companies that could pull that kind of production in. The speakers, the sound, the video. Somebody had somebody on speed dial and said, hey, are you available this date and this date? I mean, the logistics of finding people or companies that can do that, especially on short notice. Usually it's 6 to 8 months. A lot of times when we're doing even an arena show, we signed the contract 8 to 13 months ahead of the concert. And then we started planning our sales and getting audience and the production, everything. You were planning that 6 to 8 months ahead of time. I mean, it was crazy the thought that went into it. From a catering room, and you have all these writers from these, it's called a technical writer, and you read, you get to page 15, and they give a list, hey, we'd like this in our green room. Now, most of them aren't too, they're particular. They want 14 bottles of water. They need to be room temperature because they don't want to freeze their vocal cords. I mean, it was really a lot of technicalities. If you had 3 or 4 artists, you'd have somebody with a food allergy. You'd have someone that hated lasagna. I mean, it was just crazy meeting all that. Now, I'm sure some of the Christian artists and some of the speakers there that normally have a writer, I'm sure they were a little bit more relaxed since this was a memorial service. But even just getting all those people there, making the phone call and say, hey, we want Phil Wickham. Hey, we want Chris Tomlin. Hey, we want Brandon Lake. And just getting the schedule. I mean, I don't think anybody who hasn't been in that business appreciates the logistic that came off to pull off the funeral of Charlie Kirk, the memorial service. It was spectacular. My friends, what they did in 7, 8, 9 days of planning, I figure they said 11 days since the death. I'm sure the first day was a shock and tear. They couldn't see through the tears in their eye. And I'm sure the next day was kind of the same. And then somebody had to have a powwow and say, we got to pull this off. And they want to get permission from Erica Kirk. I mean, the logistics. So I'm sure they probably had about 6 full days to plan this thing. And the fact that they got all of that production in there, they got it orchestrated, the timing of everything, I'm telling you, they pulled off an impossible task. And in just a bit, we'll have the senior director of Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA Faith Initiative, Turning Point USA Faith. He's going to be on the program with us, scheduled to meet Lucas Miles. And it's just fascinating. I watched it. So anyway, I geeked out on it. I'm telling you what you saw, and you're like, wow, that was really well done. Somebody ought to get a pay raise, and maybe it was miraculous, almost as miraculous as turning water into wine. What they pulled off in 6 or 7 days is something that even the most experienced concert promoter, you can't pull off, especially in cities. Now, I don't know what Scottsdale's like where they're at, but in some cities you can't. There were some shows that we did them at a church event, maybe to get a large church in the area, 3, 5, 6,000 people would do an event there. We could get volunteers, give them free tickets to the show, and they could help unload vans or buses and things like that. They could wheel in all the production and unpack it. But if you go to an arena, let alone a stadium, depending on the city, you can't touch anything. You have a microphone box here that you want to move over there off stage. Don't do it. It has to be done by a union employee. And I'm not sure how Scottsdale works on that, but just the whole logistics, things behind the scene that you don't know were happening, was absolutely phenomenal and stunning. And it was somebody ought to get a pay raise. I'm telling you, you got to appreciate that. Not just the spirituality of it, but the excellence that they pulled it off, I think, was just fantastic. And I started watching some of that thing last night, and I said, that just to get that many 70,000 signs printed in such short notice. Now, Turning Point USA may have their own print house in shop, but 70,000 signs printed. It's not just the printing of them, it's the design of them, the artwork, the look, the logo, the branding, everything was so well done. And I just telling you, I'm geeking out. Maybe it doesn't interest you, but it sure as heck interests me that they did that. That is an event that we would have had a tough time, and we did a lot of big shows, and we would have had a tough time probably with because again, when you're doing a tour show, they give you the writer. They already have this put together. This was not a planned event. This was not a tour. They didn't have well, let's pull this out. No, this was just, they had to put it together. And it's hard to pull off a toured show that they already have everything programmed. And by the time a band hits on tour and you see the lighting, it's all computers, right? You get the stuff up, they play the computer program, they get the click track in their ear, everything's timed, the pyro go off the same time, the same videos across the screen. They do it one time. All they're doing is rinsing and repeating, setting it up night to night, tour to tour, stadium to stadium, arena to arena. But you get out on this one, all that had to be done while it was set up. It's just unbelievable. And congratulations to whoever pulled that off. All right, who's been following Kamala Harris? Anybody been following the Kamala Harris saga? Is Kamala Harris, is this a political strategy? David Axelrod, former Clinton advisor, said if this cannot be a political strategy, and if it is, he's never seen a political strategy like this. It's absolutely bat-crap crazy that this would be her political strategy. Burning bridges, throwing everyone under the bus, And here's my takeaway from everything. I think the book actually hits today, so you can actually get your own copy of it today if you want to. But here's the takeaway. She says, I didn't have the courage to get Pete Buttigieg on my, and then she throws old Timmy. Timmy thinks he's a star now. Timmy thinks he was the chosen one, and now Timmy gets deflated and find out, no, Timmy, you were not his first pick. They wanted someone more masculine than you. They wanted Pete Buttigieg, and but he somebody. I mean, they passed up on the gay guy and went with Tim Walz. I don't know. It's interesting, but Timmy's out there. She's thrown everybody in the world under the bus here, but she didn't have the courage to take the chance of the gay guy. I'm like, well, okay, I get it. Had that political considerations, but you chose Tim Walz. I think Pete Buttigieg might have been more palatable to some people than Tim Walz, who puts tampons in boys' bathrooms. But then she also throws Joe Biden under the bus, and he calls her on the night of her debate against Donald Trump, and she says he made it all about him and said, my brother's hearing that the mob bosses in Phoenix or Philadelphia are not going to fund us because they hear you're out bad-mouthing me. Are you bad-mouthing me? Are you bad-mouthing me, girl? Kamala. And she said, oh, no, Joe, I promise you I'm not. But she was distracted. She was off her tempo because Joe called and then started talking and reminiscing about many of his past debates. Well, what it tells me, if she didn't have the courage to tell Joe to pipe down and shut up, this is her debate night. If she didn't have the courage to do and pick the running mate she wants, she's a very weak woman. Now, we were told that Kamala was the end-all, be-all, and now, after the fact, she's dishing and throwing the shade at old Joe Biden. But when she was asked repeatedly, is she ready? Is he ready? Should he have run? Oh, he's sharp as a tack. I love him. He's the best ever. I think she was part of an abusive relationship with Joe and Jill Biden. And if Joe Biden was calling her on the night of her debate and asking her, "Do you support me, woman?" He was intimidating. Joe Biden was. That's what we've always known. Joe Biden's always been a bully. He's always been that way. People wanted to deny it, but I think you're just learning that Kamala did not have the courage to stand. And, you say, well, he was a friend. She was trying not to stir things up. Listen, when she swore to take the oath of to protect and defend the Constitution has an amendment that says if you have a president that is not fit to run, not mentally able, then you have an obligation to protect and defend the Constitution, to enact that 25th Amendment. And by all signs and all means, she thought maybe this guy's out of his mind. Definitely he's a bully and he's abusing her. Definitely an abusive relationship. But Kamala did not have the courage to stand up to him. And if Kamala didn't have the courage to stand up to Joe Biden, how do you think Kamala Harris would be treated by Vladimir Putin? How do you think that she would be treated by the chairman of the Communist Chinese? I mean, it's really a telling thing. And I know she thinks she's getting it out there and it's tabloid-like and it's juicy and it's a lot of great fun. But listen, the more I'm reading of what is in the book actually comes out today. Kamala was not a strong woman. Kamala was a very weak woman. And unfortunately, it sounds like she got intimidated by herself, her own perceptions, her own craving of attention and acceptance. And it sounds like she got intimidated by Joe Biden himself, old demented Joe. And only now is she willing to say, yeah, he's a very nasty hombre that made it about himself. So anyway, your takeaway, if you've read the book or you're going to get the book, feel free to jump in on that. And also, Jimmy Kimmel's returning tonight. ABC has said they have had good conversation with Jimmy. Is anybody going to watch it? Tonight will be the most watched Jimmy Kimmel show probably in 5 years. And a lot of it won't be watched by I doubt I will even hit record on it, because I know that all I got to do is tune into these programs that need content, and they'll all be telling me exactly what Jimmy Kimmel said. So I won't watch it. I think we'll all find out what he said. Will he apologize? Will he mean it? I doubt it. These people are crazed lunatics, unfortunately, and they need help more than just a good talking to by the Mickey Mouse Disney Network. They need help that comes only from heaven, because they have really crossed the Rubicon in so many areas. Jimmy Kimmel returns tonight. Don't worry, it's going to be short-lived. His contract is up sometime early next year. ABC has already lost like $70 million on his show this year. They didn't want the controversy. They had outlets and affiliates who were being threatened with bombs. One guy was shooting up, I think Portland, they were shooting up the ABC affiliate there. And ABC said, oh, we're too scared to keep the stand going. So let's just let him. We've already lost enough money. And his contract won't be renewed. So it's going to be Jimmy Kimmel for a little bit of time, but I don't think Jimmy Kimmel will survive much past this. Arloa says, yes, somebody else will have to watch this, so I don't have to. Don't worry, Arloa. It will be out there. You're going to find it and hear it. There's no need for me to put myself through any of the misery of watching that feckless fool, Jimmy Kimmel, bloviate about his mental illness and the derangement that he has for anybody that is not just Donald Trump, but anybody that supports Donald Trump. They're bat crap crazy, unfortunately, and you can see it. They're still threatening violence. Scott Jennings is being threatened by Keith Olbermann. They're still threatening violence when we experience violence on our side and they assassinate someone on our side. We get together for prayer and vigils and worship and sermons. They burn places down to threaten people, and they're still threatening people to this day. They have not learned their lesson. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is a Tuesday edition of the show. Thank you by the way, for letting me vent and opine about the setup of that Charlie Kirk memorial. It was fantastic. The production of it was unbelievable. Okay, I got this story. I want to go to Laura Carno, though, but this is a story. We'll do this as a question of the day sometime. A woman's upset with her brother trying to get him to change his mind. You know why? He was out smoking the meats. He was out on the smoker doing a little barbecue, smoking, poking the coals, all the stuff you do. The pellets or whatever they are. And he says, I got a name for my son. He's going to name his son. Wife's going to have babies. Going to have a son. Going to name his son Brisket. Strong name, isn't it? Brisket. No joke. Anyway, it's a Reddit thread now that Brisket might not be an appropriate name for a human. I don't know. By the way, speaking of humans and non-humans, I should have shown these photos, and I still may have time to do this. My dog got a really bad haircut yesterday, and if he were a human, I would not be able to do the show right now because we would be beginning the homeschool process right now. He would not be going out to school. He said, Dad, I can't show my head like this. My puppy got a bad haircut. Yeah, poor Ralphie. I'm going to show you photos in a second. I'll show you. He got a bad haircut. Same groomer. She said, can I take him a little tighter? And that way we can get that undercoat of this Keyshawn. I said, sure. A little bit shorter will be fine. We trim him down a little shorter in the summertime anyway. And what she did to that dog, it's rough. Yeah, new groomer. Got to find a new groomer. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Laura Carno. She always has great hair. No bad haircut.
Well, I'll say maybe better hair on Jimmy Lakey days than my non-Jimmy Lakey days. My hair is naturally curly, and I'm usually like a big mop.
Well, you had a hat on last week, not letting us see that adornment on the top of your head.
Mop. I know. Yeah, it was a busy week. It was a very busy week.
All right, Laura Carno, good to have you here. I can't believe I made a segue. That's how good we are. I made a segue from my dog having a bad groomer to Laura Carno never has a bad hair day.
Yeah. So let me give you my 2 cents on your dog. Your dog is probably more comfortable with that hairdo. One of our only 2 cats, because I'm married, or I would have more cats. One of our 2 cats has long hair, and she it's so cute. She gets
that's the bad haircut. Oh, producer Chad,
it's so cute.
No, producer Chad, look at the other angle where show him normal. Can we have a Ralphie photo normal? That's what he normally looks like. That's a Keyshawn. That's Ralphie. And look what they did to him. Look what they did to him. They shaved it all off.
But he's comfortable. One of my cats is a long hair, and we get her hair cut like that a couple times a year. That's called a lion cut in a cat. And before we get her hair cut, she's just like, she's hot. She's laying around. She doesn't want to do anything. The second we get her hair cut, she's like prancing around.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I gave Ralphie 2 treats last night, extra pets, and I told him I'm sorry. And then I looked it up on AI. Do dogs know that they look ridiculous? And they don't, but they can oftentimes sense the sadness of their owner. So I try to be extra perky because I didn't want him to get depressed because I was sad for his hair.
They have tiny little brains. They don't know what they look like.
I know they don't, but I think he would know. If he looked in the mirror, I think he'd be shocked. He'd think we have an intruder in the house. All right.
Yeah.
Enough of that. Laura Carno, one of the nations, you sent me this story about one of the nation's leading proponents of stricter gun laws wants to see the Democrat Party maybe accept some pro-gun political people in the party. Are Democrats sensing that this gun thing is this gun topic and seeing as gun grabbers is not working for the brand?
I mean, I think that's what's going on, but I'm not going to hold my breath. But there, and the article that I sent you is in the Reload, and it's behind the paywall, so I sent you a relevant cut of it. But I've seen it in some other places too. Some Democrats who have been all about gun control are talking about, did we go too far on gun control because we are losing a lot of Democrats? And Jimmy, when I started doing a lot of media on the pro-gun topic during the recalls in 2013 in Colorado, there were pro-gun Democrats. There were even pro-gun Democrats in Colorado, and now it's kind of like the transing of the kids thing or whatever. It's a litmus test, and so there are some Democrats saying, should we take a look at this again and not be so crazy, I'll use that word, on gun control because we've lost too many people. And the Democrats in many sectors are going down the tubes in their approval ratings because of some of their most extreme values that are really going against the mainstream of America.
There's some people that have guns and they'll say, I'm only a hunter. But I think most people that have guns, we would never be hesitant to use that gun to defend our household or property. You just best will stay away because we practice for moments like this. So don't be jacking with us. But there's the Democrats, this number I saw on CNN, actually, they're way underwater when it comes to the topic of crime. They are way underwater. Republicans are more than 20, 30 points ahead in approval rating on how you handle crime. People see those guns in America not just as a hunting device, but they do know it's self-defense. And we do know we have a crime problem in this country. Maybe they're looking at the polling saying, yeah, people are really concerned about crime. And when you talk about how to stop crime, they look at the police. They've been on the wrong side of this one, and a gun for your home.
Yep. Yeah, and you're exactly right. They're looking at polling and saying we're not going to gain any ground if we keep calling a good chunk of America. I think it's easily a 50+% of Americans are gun owners. We're not going to do any good for ourselves by alienating those people. And especially as crime gets worse, more and more people are saying, okay, well, I got to do this myself. Similar to what's happening in schools, where schools say, police aren't going to be here the second it happens to stop it. So I've got to do something about it.
Yeah. The voice of Laura Carno, if you're listening later in the day, where thousands of earballs by the end of the day, watching the live stream and listening on the podcast, thousands of earballs will hear this show. That is Laura Carno, fastercolorado.org, fastercolorado.org, fastercolorado.org. All right, Laura, let's dive into this Jimmy Kimmel thing. Will you have the DVR set there at the construction site for the old Jimmy Kimmel return?
No, absolutely not.
You're very quick on that answer, weren't you?
Well, yeah, I have a lot going on in my life, and I don't have time to watch something I know I'm going to hate. Sometimes you watch something you don't know you're going to hate, and you go, man, I hate this. But I know going in, I'm going to hate it. And to your point, there's lots of clips going to be out there, and I can just, find them the next day. But here's my thought on the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing. Should he be on air? Should he not be on air? My bottom line is I don't give a crap. I don't. I mean, there's lots of TV shows I don't watch. There's lots of TV shows all of us don't watch. There's a lot of TV out there. But if there are people who want to watch it, I'm a free speech absolutist here. People want to watch it, great. If it's so bad, not enough people watch it, then it goes out of business. Just like, if you had a taco shop on the corner that nobody wanted, that nobody liked their food, then it's going to go out of business. Great. Nobody has a right to be on TV. Nobody has a right to open a shop. It's just capitalism will sort it out. And I think with everything going on, and I got a lot of friends who are super interested in all the culture stuff and all the, social stuff, that's fine. We all look at this stuff differently. I'm just a free speech capitalist absolutist here. It'll go down the tubes because it sucks, and because his humor, I'm sorry, humor air quotes, is only interesting to a small number of people, and it's just going to go away on its own. And for people who are doing terrible things, like saying it was Republicans that did this or what have you to Charlie Kirk, I say shun them. And shunning, I'm all for a comeback of shunning in society. Just
Yeah.
ignore people. Like he's getting more coverage and everybody covering his clips than people who actually watch his show. And so just ignore him, shun him, and go hug your family.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He may come back tonight, but there's a lot of people in America that just won't watch him. They won't be able to. Sinclair and I think Nexstar I think they're holding their ground, and they're not going to. These are some big affiliates of Portland, Washington, D.C., some places in California that might want to see the very liberal, radical Jimmy Kimmel. Their ownership groups are saying, no, we're not going to air it. So he may be coming back, but he's coming back with a limp because not going to have near the audience he used to.
Yeah, which is precisely the free market in action. If the companies say, we don't want to take the negative impact of having a show that is offensive to a lot of people, we're just not going to run it. That will ultimately be the demise of the show, which is great. I like it.
Yeah. Laura Cardo, one more quick question, not on our list here, but obviously the big talk of the week has been the Charlie Kirk Memorial. I'm sure if you didn't watch all of it, it's like you said, you got a lot of clips out there that you've seen. Give me your takeaway. And I thought just most fascinating is watching this thing going, wow, this is how we're responding to the death, the murder, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. There's not been one Molotov cocktail thrown. There's not been arrest in the streets, no rioting. That was the most fascinating compare and contrast, and I hope that wasn't lost on America.
Yeah, so many interesting angles of it. The religious revival angle is very interesting, especially among the young people that I think Charlie Kirk, in life and in death, he's going to be really responsible for that. The contrast of, most, what was it, fiery but mostly peaceful protests, that kind of thing. One of the things I really got out of the service and some of the interviews that came, in the aftermath of that, is we have work to do, and there is no wallowing here. We have a country to save. These are my words, but we have work to do, and I really appreciate that, because we as a country, as conservatives, could wallow in the assassination of somebody very prominent in conservative politics. We could wallow for a very long time, but we have work to do. So memorial service over, he'll never be forgotten, and let's get back to work. And I really liked that aspect of it, because we can't keep looking backward. There's a lot of work forward.
The organizational aspect of it, I was talking about as a promoter and a guy that's done events. That was just fascinating that they pulled that off. Then they also pulled off the mourning and just they had to deal with their inner grief. And simultaneously, they came out at the same time and they decided to announce their campus tours going. I mean, the organization, the leadership that Charlie Kirk put in place, that they could literally walk and chew bubblegum and cry their eyes out at the exact same time. Right. It's phenomenal. That's an organization in and of itself, whether you like the politics of it or not. It's fascinating how they're not really missing a beat, and they're doing it all through tears.
Yeah, there was an interview I saw in the days following his death, with somebody who, I don't remember the name, but who runs a podcast for entrepreneurs, and had Charlie Kirk on. And his angle was, conservative, religious, all that stuff is good. But the dude was an incredible entrepreneur. Yeah. And I think that's what you're seeing, is this is an organization that went and did very hard things. He tried to convert college kids, and that's no small task.
Job, yeah.
Right. And but yeah, the entrepreneurial nature, the strong organization he created, will be his legacy.
Yeah, they just haven't missed a beat. I know they've done it through a lot of tears and anguish, but it's just reflective of the people that he surrounded himself with that kept marching even over the last 10, 11, 12 days. All right, Laura Carno, it's a pleasure. You have a great organization called fastercolorado.org, keeping school kids safe from crazy people that might want to walk on the campus and do bad things. And we just had a bad thing in Evergreen, Colorado, the same day that Charlie Kirk was killed, a shooting at Evergreen High School. You want to keep schools like Evergreen safe, and you can help do that by supporting Faster Colorado. Did I get that right?
You got that all correct. And folks can go to fastercolorado.org to see what we're up to. We've got a little sweepstakes going on. You can win a couple of really cool guns that you can't buy everywhere and a side of beef. I had somebody email me and say, what if I don't want the beef? And so maybe he's a vegan gun owner. I don't know, but we certainly would be able to get that to some food banks if somebody didn't want the beef. But go help us there. And I'm in the middle of writing a guest op-ed for the Denver Post, responding to them saying, yeah, sure, an SRO should be in every school, but can't it doesn't work financially. What choice do we have? Well, I'm responding to that. So
fastercolorado.org. We'll link it up. Talk about that next week. Laura, I appreciate you hopping on the program. Fastercolorado.org. Fastercolorado.org. All right. Good to have you here on the Tuesday edition of the show. Appreciate you all being here. Don't forget, we'll talk more about, I got a new initiative I want to throw at you and have you pray about over the next 24 hours for our charity work at Rivers Promise. I'll explain it here in just a moment about sponsorship. We talk about child sponsorship as we build Legacy Christian Academy. I keep a promise to my son that was adopted from Rwanda. Adoption is a miracle. And I will talk to you here in just a second. And I want you to have 24 hours to pray about something that I'm going to give you an idea about and see if you feel that little tickle in your heart that says, yeah, I could help out in this area. So stand by for that, riverspromise.org. If you want to check out the charity, you'll see it as a sponsor behind us, but riverspromise.org. Yeah. All right, let me walk him into the program, but without no further ado, running a couple of seconds behind. It's got a brand new book out. You might have seen it featured on some other shows. It's called Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising. His name is Lucas Miles. He's a senior director of Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA Faith. I welcome into the program, Mr. Lucas Miles. Lucas, welcome into the show, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you hopping in here. First of all, the obvious is you're doing a book tour all while you're mourning the loss of a good friend, and you're also seemingly not missing a beat. Turning Point organization, the Turning Point Faith. I mean, you guys are phenomenal. I don't know how you pulled off that event on Sunday that millions and millions of people watched and planned it all, did it through tears. You guys are just phenomenal. That's all I can say. How'd you do this?
Well, first off, I think we owe a lot of this to Charlie Kirk. He spent 10 years of his life going around the country, finding what he felt were the best people for the job, bringing us together as a team. He had a way of seeing things, I think, in each one of us that we couldn't even see in ourselves and bringing the best out of us. I always say that working at Turning Point is a lot more like enlisting than it is just going to work for some nonprofit. There's just a real spirit of like whatever it takes there among the staff. In 7 days, our events team, our development team, and everybody, that they pulled off an event that would normally take most organizations on the low estimate 6 to 9 months, if not 2 years to plan. It was absolutely incredible, phenomenal. One of the most important televised events in American history. I think one of the strongest, clearest messages that we've heard in a really long time. Charlie impacted so many in his life. He was a friend. He was a friend before he was even my boss. I'm honored to have known him. I'm honored to keep his memory going. But he's even impacted even more people in his death. God used him in such a marvelous way. And I think all because he was willing to say, "Here I am, send me, Lord." And we saw the fruit of that.
It's become obvious, I think, to America. For some of us, we kind of saw before, but the Bible's very clear. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, powers and principalities. The unseen realm is out there. And, sometimes we think our enemy is the person in office in Washington or the state capitol here. We're in a spiritual battle. And I think that's become obvious. And some people maybe don't like it. They don't want to hear about it, but it's true. What we're seeing happening in our country is not just about politicians, red and blue. There's a spiritual dynamic, and I'm guessing that's where the book goes.
Yeah, for sure. So, in this book, Pagan Threat, this is not just about saying that, somebody who is, Wiccan, or somebody who worships Thor or some other Norse god is a threat to America. What I'm presenting in this book is that there is an attempt by those on the left, and specifically Marxists in this nation and around the world, who are trying to supplant the Christian faith in America with a new worldview, and that is specifically a pagan worldview. Christianity and Marxism, for a time, can seem to coexist. We have this thing that we call woke Christianity or the Christian left. I've written about those and warned about those extensively. But woke Christianity is eventually self-refuting. It will, if you push into Marxism, it will take you away and you'll deconstruct from your faith. Or if you push into the Christian side of woke Christianity, you'll eventually realize it's antithetical to Marxism and you'll walk away from the Marxist worldview. But Marxist paganism is different. It has lasting power. It has staying power in that regard, because there's not the rigid moral structure within paganism and a pagan worldview that there is within Christianity. So I think there's a very intentional push to push Christianity out of this nation's worldview and replace it with another spiritual placeholder. Doesn't matter if it's witchcraft, occult, Wicca, doesn't matter, theosophy. It just matters that it's not Christianity, because Christianity is an affront to this Marxist intention that we're seeing, pushed so strongly today upon us.
If you're listening later in the day, not to the live stream, but to the for thousands of earballs will hear the podcast of this, the name of the book is called Pagan Threat: Confronting America's Godless Uprising. Lucas Miles is my guest. Lucas, I was skimming through the book. I haven't had time to get through the entire thing yet. But I found it interesting that you talked about the generation, the younger people that distrust so many things that they've earned distrust. You talked about the COVID shutdowns, the lockdown, the lies of the government, and how all that plays in. We're reaping what we sowed back then. I want you to unpack that.
Yeah, I mean, look, we live in a conspiracy-driven culture, and I think that is it's really philosophically, we think of it as conspiracy theories, but philosophically, the term is it's an age of skepticism. Typically, anytime you have two really strong beliefs, so we could, look at Aristotle and Plato. Those were, two very strong beliefs, but they had a lot of opposing viewpoints. After those two were there, it created an age of skepticism, philosophically. I think that we've had two very opposing beliefs of liberty and control, of free market and socialism. And these things have clashed together. The generation that's come up next is going, look, I'm tired of the fighting. I just don't believe anything anymore, and I don't trust anybody anymore. You add to that a lot of trauma, from the Twin Towers falling to multiple wars across the world, to increase in school shooters, to COVID shutdowns, isolation, missing your high school graduation, your high school prom, because of some totalitarian policy. And that all adds to a lot of, it's a perfect breeding ground for these other ideas to get injected in. And I think that, Marxists and those that are anti-American and anti-God have taken this opportunity, a lot of dark places on the internet for these young people to go, and they get injected with this counter message. And for some of them, like we saw 2 weeks ago, they break and they end up going off and they do something tragic and terrible, like taking the life of a dear friend.
Let's talk about the solution. I'm guessing there's a lot of folks in America that are in this trap and they don't recognize. They would never say, I'm into paganism. Yeah. They use it by another name, whatever name it is called. What is the way that we dig out from this hole that we're in?
Yeah, so right now there's about 1.5 million people that surprisingly do identify as pagan or pagan practitioners. That is expected to double by 2050, I believe. But that in of itself is not the massive concern. The massive concern is exactly what you described. It's that soft paganism. It's people that, even would say, I mean, I was out on the street in Vegas here recently doing a man on the street video, and I asked a bunch of people, if they were Christian. They told me yes. And then I said, what do you believe happens after you die? And about half of them told me they believe in reincarnation. So we have paganism that has crept into our Christian worldview, and we don't even know it. What's the plan? I have a 7-step plan in this book, Pagan Threat, for the church, for parents, for grandparents, for Christian leaders, conservatives alike, to be able to walk out. It includes a stronger emphasis on reaching the youth. It includes, really leveraging the digital platforms that are out there today. They're being leveraged by the left. We have to really learn how to leverage those for good. Charlie Kirk was somebody who knew how to do that. He was so effective in reaching young people online. It involves returning to primary Christian doctrine. I have several other steps in there as well, but they're all laid out in the book, Pagan Threat.
The name of the book, Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising. Lucas, real quick, sometimes history has a time to repeat itself. Has there ever been a time in American history where we're at the same point? Is this kind of a new fight in America?
I mean, weirdly, it almost feels like a combination of the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, like happening all at once. I mean, I feel like what we saw even at Charlie's memorial the other night, I immediately was able to understand all of the quotes and the speeches that we've read from our founders and them standing up for faith and God and country and freedom. It made so much more sense to me after that. But I don't think there's ever been a time exactly like this. I mean, we could certainly go to, crisis and chaos moments in history, but there's a massive revival that's taking place, and also a large darkness that's increasing and spreading. And so those two things are creating a very unique environment right now. I think everybody's kind of heads on a swivel, both ideologically as well as physically, and making sure that we're understanding the times we're in. There's great opportunity for churches right now in revival. There's great opportunity, I think, for conservatives to win over a lot of people who have been disenfranchised by the left. But it's also very unique. There's so many different pitfalls and so many different camps, and the internet and how fast information spreads makes that, very unique in today's world that other time periods did not have. And so I think we're riding a new era right now. Learn from the past, but recognize we've never been here before.
What is the final question, the advice that you in the book and you would tell people that are watching this here? You obviously could be mourning, taking a week off, just kind of hiding, but you're out continuing to get the message out. Turning Point USA's announced their campus events are going to continue. To an audience like this, or to pastors that watch this or listen to this later, what do we need to know about this pagan threat, and what is our role in pushing back here?
When I've been pastoring the same church for 20 years, I've been involved in Christian ministry for a really long time. I started working for Charlie Kirk about a year and a half ago, and I shared at one of our events about a year into my time there that I was embarrassed by how slothful and lazy the church in America has become. Here's an organization that is not the church, and they are working circles around most Christian organizations to share the gospel, even though it's not even the primary focus of what Turning Point was created to do. I think that pastors especially, although I love the church and I love pastors, I want to see the church thrive. I think there's a lot of pastors in America that have become very fat ideologically, fat spiritually. They have stopped working as hard. They stopped striving for the lost. Charlie Kirk showed us how to work harder than anybody else around. I'm going to make it my life's mission. That's why I'm here today when I could easily be mourning. There's tears still left to shed. But Charlie showed me how to work and work hard. And I'm going to keep doing that all the days of my life because the mission is worth it. People are worth it. The next generation is worth it.
The average watcher out there that's not a pastor, what do you encourage them to do? I know the book is something they should read. What's an action step?
So, you can head over to cpusafaith.com. You can sign up there and find a church near you. Charlie would say, open up your Bible, go to church, read your Bible, get married, have a great family, have a lot of kids, celebrate freedom. There's a lot of things that we can do. We all have to be part of this. We're all, it's going to take all of us to fill the shoes left behind, from our friend Charlie. But I think that, we have to keep going, press in the Lord. The time is now.
Lucas Miles, Senior Director of Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA Faith. Lucas, congrats on the book. I hope everybody will get a copy of it. And again, it's called Pagan Threat, Confronting America's Godless Uprising. And if you want to learn more about Turning Point USA, again, go find it. Look up Turning Point USA, Turning Point USA Faith, and get a copy of the book, tpusafaith.com. Right there on the screen it is. And again, Pagan Threat. I think it's important that we not just read the book, but I just love seeing that books like this go, if you will, go viral. They climb on the sales list. I really hope that they will. You'll go pick it up because I think it's a statement to the world when they say, "Hey, look what they're reading." There's an audiobook available as well, Pagan Threat: Confronting America's Godless Uprising. And of course, get to church, pray, Pray for your country, pray for America, and pray that Turning Point USA continues to do the great work that they are doing. Thanks, Lucas Miles, for coming on the program. All right, we had a question of the day that was just kind of fun. It had nothing to do with really politics. It had to do with what your favorite memory was from, let's say, the 80s or 90s, back when your hot era was. Mine was late 80s, early 90s, and those were my days. And again, I realize that's old to a lot of folks. When my son came home and said, "Dad, we have dress up day," I thought it was going to be 50s day because I'm an 80s and 90s kid. It was 80s day. He wanted to dress like I dressed in middle school, which was kind of scary. But anyway, your favorite, a lot of great thoughts coming in there. A lot of you remember the Blockbuster video rental nights. A lot of you remember the days of no cell phones. Remember, it's just fascinating. My son would have friends over and you go in, they're all on separate devices. I remember the days and the time and the glory of just walking into the bedroom and you're there with all your buddies and you're fighting on who gets the joystick to play the Atari or the Nintendo or the little keypad. And you're all focused on one thing as opposed to a bunch of several different things. Stacy says she misses Mrs. Pac-Man. Not Pac-Man, but Mrs. Pac-Man on the arcade. Arcade games are something you kind of miss out. Dennis says Izod Lacoste shirts and members-only jackets. Was it members only? And then there was a London Fog, wasn't there? That was a good one. And remember the era of designer jeans? The girls would wear what they call the Calvin Kleins or the Gloria Vanderbilts. And the boys could wear the Calvin Klein. And what was it that had a horse? Jordache. Showing my age, aren't I? Yeah, that's the the old Atari computer system games. That was exciting. Yeah, Pac-Man sucked on that thing. I remember Pac-Man's coming out on the Atari. What was it, 5600? And I didn't have one. We were poor. My friend across the street had one, and he got the Pac-Man, and it didn't look anything like the arcade game. It was very, very, very disappointing. And I wasn't into the hair bands at the time. I just wasn't into the metal thing. I just didn't like the music of the 80s. So people want to go back and listen to 80s music. I'm like, please, I don't think so. Anybody remember some of the other trends that happened in the 80s, though? The Valley Girls. There was a movie that had Valley Girls and Totally Tubular, stuff like that. Dumb stuff. Yeah, neon colors were a big deal. And I remember when my son was in middle school and elementary school, he would get into these neon colors and these bright oranges and greens, and this looked like he worked in the construction zone. And by the time he was in 7th or 8th grade, he was, "Dad, we can give this to Goodwill. I don't want these clothes anymore." I said, "What happened?" And he got about 7th grade, 8th grade, and he said, "I should give them to a 6th grader. These bright colors are the 6th grade starter pack." So yeah, he grew out of the bright colors. Yeah. Anyway, hair metal music and concerts. I don't remember that. I remember the first time I smelled marijuana. I didn't know what it was. I thought it smelled weird. I was at Six Flags over Texas, and I believe there was a concert. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was well before my time. I think I was just a child. And Six Flags over Texas had a season's pass. You got your chores done. You went to Six Flags. Just 5 minutes down the road from where I lived. That was like going to the water park. It's just what you did. Well, there was a concert one night. I think it was Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, and I didn't know who they were. I never heard of them. I didn't listen to music. I wasn't a music guy back then, which is interesting. I got in the music business. Anyway, I was walking to a ride. I said, "God, that smells." And some of the older kids with us said, that's marijuana. That's whatever they called it. I said, "That smells nasty. That's awful." Then I end up in Colorado where you smell it everywhere all the time. Anyway, Arloa says, "My favorite thing about the 80s is just that our kids were still home." I know that's not what you're looking for. No, that's great. The 80s thing is there. I also remember, you know what? This was not 80s, this is 90s, but I was still young then. Saved by the Bell. That was a good show on Saturday morning because you grew up in the 80s. You had to watch the cartoons, and after the cartoons were done, and by the way, fight me, ABC had the best cartoons. ABC, they had the best cartoons. They had Schoolhouse Rock. And you're in the 90s, and I'm a little older, and I don't watch morning cartoons, but you have no habits on a Saturday morning, nothing to do. And then they start playing Saved by the Bell on Saturday morning, and I said, "I like that show." Yeah, I like that show. Yeah, I wanted that hairstyle, but my hair I never had that good a hair. Never did. All right, good to have you here. Benjamin says, "I have mixed feelings about this. I'm a non-militant atheist conservative. I do support Judeo-Christian values, but it seems Christian conservatives are alienating non-Christian conservative brethren. It is my belief we all need conservatives to help heal America, not just the Christian one. Benjamin, I don't know what you've heard, but I think we need all conservatives to band together. And I think the call to action is those of us who are people of faith and are not atheists. We recognize a different causation for a lot of this stuff, and it is a spiritual battle. But that doesn't mean you and I can't fight together. It doesn't mean we can't stand arm in arm together. We just we believe in an unseen realm that you don't see. We see a root cause, and we believe a root cause for the world we live in. It all boils down to a spiritual world. If you don't believe in the spiritual world, I don't know what you see as the root cause, but at least you see the same results and you want to change the results. So, Benjamin, I appreciate you jumping in there and understand your mixed feelings, but I don't think you'll find anybody in this audience or the audiences I know that would shun you because you're a non-Christian or you're an atheist. Join with us. Join with us and, join with us. It's good to have you, Benjamin. Good to have you out in the chat room. Thanks for jumping in there and expressing your thoughts. But again, the whole point of Lucas's book is that there's an unseen realm that's out there. And if you believe that like I do, then we have to be prepared we have to realize who the enemy is and what the enemy is. And the enemy is not flesh and blood. And that's where the atheistic or pagan left goes, is that their enemy is Charlie, their enemy is Donald, their enemy is Jimmy, their enemy is Sean, their enemy is Rush, their enemy is whoever's out there, small or big, proclaiming things. And because they see their enemy as flesh and blood. And yet we as conservatives that have a Judeo-Christian value, we see our enemies as children of God that we disagree with and we think they're misguided, but we see them as children of God. And we're reminded by Scripture that we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. This is why I've expressed recently that I had a situation that I heard about a year ago where I could not go in the building, refused to go in the building because I felt that there was a dangerous situation that needed to be avoided. And what I noticed in the role of that person is I was a happy warrior, man. I was friendly, happy. Let's rock and roll. Let's go. I didn't care that this person had different political views, but this person had real anger issues, and they came out in threatening messages at times, and I had to avoid that. You know why? Because I saw this person as a child of God. I saw this person as one of God's kids, and that's who he was. No need to, didn't like the job he did, but doesn't mean that he was needed to be dehumanized. And yet you could tell by the threatening messages and the tone of voice and just the demeanor that this guy saw everything as personal. He thought he was wrestling against flesh and blood, and he wasn't. And that's what separates us and them. Benjamin, appreciate you causing us to digress and go down the rabbit hole. That's what we like to do. We like to do that. All right, everybody's happy out there? All right. Somebody says, preach it. Well, open your Bibles if you would. We're taking an offering. All right, here's what I want to do. I told you I want you to pray about something. I want to talk about Sherry Cree as well. So we take a collection if it's church. My church doesn't take collections. They encourage you to the website, and then they stand at the back door with buckets. If you don't put it in, they hit you. No, just kidding. All of mine's automated, so it's easy that way. All right, let's talk homes and Sherry. Then I want to tell you something about Rivers Promise in just a second. Homes. I was thinking this morning, I'm planning a trip in November to head back to Africa. So about 60 days, 50 days, 60 days. I plan to be back there. Oh, God, I can't wait. I'm so excited. But I tell you, Sherry Cree was with us a couple of years ago, and she saw personally the life-changing impact that Rivers Promise has and building Legacy Christian Academy and all the things that we're doing in this area that literally would have absolutely nothing if we weren't doing the Lord's work there. Listen, Sherry, when you meet her, she's not just the guru of real estate, the ninja of real estate. She's connected. She can give you advice and kind of just guide you through. And again, it's not about sticking a sign in the yard. It's the strategy around it. It's the process of getting there and making sure, like right now, it's beautiful green right now in Colorado because we're getting a lot of rain. If you're planning to sell your house in the spring, now would be a great time to have Sherry arrange to get the photos of your home done, especially the outside, because the landscaping is looking beautiful right now with this rain. Little things like that you can plan ahead, knowing what is coming down the street. I hope you will call Sherry. Listen, she will give a portion of any proceeds that she gets, commission she gets on the sale. She will ask you, hey, I want to donate some to your charity of choice. What's your charity of choice? And she'll make that donation for you to your charity. She is just a fantastic person. She understands understands the impact of generosity. Her family, her husband are very generous people, and she understands the importance of giving back to the community. But ultimately, her goal is to help you use real estate to create generational wealth, and she wants you to be able to use real estate to make your dreams come true, and just put you in the position later in life that you're set and you've made the right decisions. And there's some good decisions, bad decisions. She can talk about the interest rates going up, the interest rates going down, places that are trending. How do you get in that first home whenever the cost of living has gone way up? Listen, talk to her. If you think real estate is out of reach, or maybe you want a second home, maybe you move out of the state, in the state, whatever that real estate question is, homeswithsherry.com. Again, right here in Colorado. And whether you're in Broomfield or Boulder, whether you're in Fort Collins or Fort Lupton, Denver, Aurora, Park Meadows, Littleton, Lakewood, you get the idea. Homeswithsherry.com. Have a conversation, and don't think you need to wait till the last minute and say, okay, no, start interviewing people. Even if it's next year you're going to sell, start that conversation now. Homeswithsherry.com. 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 All right, well, another great comment. Benjamin, who commented earlier, said, I'm glad to see the conservative pool grow through Christianity. And well, they do go hand in hand. I think that's what Charlie has figured out. You look at your biblical worldview and the values that are in the biblical worldview, and then I look at the political options on the table, and I say, if I really truly look at my biblical worldview, there's only one political option party on the table that even somewhat represents that. Not perfect, but if there's deals on the table politically, how do I? Yeah. If I'm interpreting the Bible that I read, it's not a choice. It's not a choice. There's only one way to go on that. All right, here's what we're going to do. I wrap up the program with the meme roulette, but I got to tell you, Rivers Promise, we have a sponsorship program, right? A sponsorship program. You can sponsor a little child, and $65 a month. Send them to school, gives them health insurance. It gives them 2 meals a day for a month, gives them a school uniform, really changes your life, builds a hope in the future that a kid would normally not have. Now, we have a lot of unsponsored kids. All of them go to our school or in school, but we need to help to keep them there, and so we need more sponsors. So some of you have sponsored. I got a batch of photos yesterday evening for some sponsors out there that have sponsored in recent months, and they're holding up signs to say thank you. And we'll be sending those out via, I think those go out postal mail, if I recall, is that how we usually do that. So we'll get those out here real soon. But I've got every month I get a report, and this is a report that I hate to see. And these are lapsed sponsorships, all right? These are lapsed sponsorships. These are sponsors that maybe their credit card expired and they just haven't gone back in and set up a new credit card on the website. They haven't contacted our office. We've reached out to them, email. There's some people that are... there's some people that, they just don't want to tell us they're not sponsoring anymore, but a credit card expires, a payment changes or something, or just something glitches, and we keep that child in school as long as possible, but eventually we have to go find that child a new sponsor, and that's what we're at the process now. So over the weekend, I personally spent some time going through that list, combing through that list, and sending out emails and messages to say, hey, you got to get this thing caught up. You got to do that. So here's what's going to happen. In the next 24 hours, the system that we have track of all this is going to cancel about a handful of sponsorships. Cancel them. And the people that had sponsored them will no longer be their sponsor. And for whatever reason, we don't judge that. I just got to focus on the kids, right? We got to focus on the children. And so what I'm going to do in the next few days is I'm going to show you some children that have a lapsed sponsor. And maybe some of them are younger, some of them are older, most of them are elementary age. But if you feel the need to sponsor that child for 1 month, or maybe you want to be the sole sponsor for that child for a commitment, you want to do $65 a month or just 1 month or part of it, I'm going to start presenting to you what I call the lapsed kids. And the kids didn't lapse, but their sponsors have lapsed, and we haven't heard from their sponsors. And we do this every once in a while, but I usually just don't make it public. I'm not telling you who the sponsors. That's none of your business. I'm focused on the kids and getting these kids sponsors so that they can stay in school and keep the care level that they have known while they have been sponsors. So I want you to start praying about it. And if the next couple of days just meet a child on the screen that pops up and you go, wow, maybe I should sponsor that. Even just 1 month, $65. Maybe you want to become that child's actual sponsor, and they will write you letters, send you photos, etc., and you can write them as well. Become a part of your family. That's a possibility as well. Anyway, pray about that if you would, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And I'll start unveiling some of these beautiful kids that need sponsors. And there's a lot on my website right now. You go riverspromise.org, just click, and you'll see producer Chad and I worked in tandem just a couple of days ago, adding 30 children that just now new on our website. They just started our new kindergarten class at Legacy Christian Academy, and producer Chad and I personally uploaded those children to the website. We're not a big organization, my friend. We do a lot of volunteering, and producer Chad and I do a hell of a lot of that as well. So anyway, go to the website, riverspromise.org. But if you want me to present some of these kids that have lap sponsorships, I think the system is going to cancel those sponsorships today that aren't brought up today, because we got to get these kids on the sponsorship program. So stand by for that, pray about it, and we'll start talking about some of these kids later in the week. All right, here we go. Meme roulette. Ladies and gentlemen, round and round the globe we go. We steal memes from where? We don't know. Here it is. A Nazi rally has inspired millions to forgive and love their enemies. You know, you'd think the Nazis would have jumped to the streets and brought out all sorts of chaos. No, millions inspired to love and forgive. All of you idiots that have called us Nazis and bad names. Yeah, that illustrates your absurdity. Here we go. Oh, by the way, those of you that thought Donald Trump got rid of Jimmy Kimmel, are you sending Donald Trump a thank you note for letting Jimmy back on the air? I mean, he's back on tonight. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. Ladies and gentlemen, meet your... I cannot unsee that, producer Chad. Meet your Civil War opponents. I don't think she's pregnant. I think she's been eating processed foods is what I think. That's a poster image of make America healthy again. Cannot unsee that. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. We live in a time when intelligent people are being killed so that stupid people won't be offended. Yeah, they crossed it out. I used to say silenced, but now they're being killed because stupid people get offended. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. If you lost your job, this is from comedian Steve Byrne, who's fun to follow. If you lost your job making fun of Charlie Kirk, Venezuela's looking for boat captains. The Love Boat. Yeah, exciting and true. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one know. Hi, I'd like a wake-up call. All the violence is coming in from the left. There's your wake-up call. Yeah, the gun violence is coming from the left out there, my friends. Political violence coming from the left. I'd like a wake-up call. There it is. Anybody still do wake-up calls? I don't know if they still do that. Someone just told me that Patrick Mahomes looks like Darlene from Roseanne. And now I can't unsee it. You know, can we go back to the fat girl? Let's do that again. There's so many things I want to unsee. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. Ladies and gentlemen, that means our meme machine has been run dry. Like teats on a bowl, they're no longer useful to spin that thing until tomorrow, when the producer Chad will reload the meme machine out there. I want to thank you again for all of your participation in the show. If you've missed a portion of it, you want to go back and hear the Laura Carno conversation or the Lucas Miles conversation from Turning Point USA Faith, all you got to do is go to all the podcast platforms, download and listen to your favorite podcast platform. Just look up Jimmy Lakey Unleashed. Jimmy Lakey Unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. Unleashed I am, and I would love for you to listen to us on the podcast version as well. Invite all of your friends to be back here tomorrow. We will put out that Turning Point USA Lucas Miles interview out later in the day for your listening consumption and conversation. Would love to get that out there with you. And again, don't forget Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com. And don't forget, you got to be praying about Rivers Promise. I'm going to be introducing some children to you. And whether you want to help for a part of a month or a whole month, or maybe become a sponsor, we would use your help. That's going to be our project here the next 4, 5, 6 days. It's going to be a short-lived project, but I just want to focus on that and say your prayers and ask God if there's anything you could do to help any of these kids that are his children. All right? That's it. Let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure being here. Riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org. I'm on the wrong screen to go to the show closer, but here I am. I found the right screen. Show closer it is. Until we meet again, don't forget, you can find me on the Twitter. It's just my name, Jimmy Lakey. Find me on the Instagram, just my name. Facebook.com is a little different. Facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. Rumble, look up Lakey Unleashed or Jimmy Lakey. You'll find both of those there. We're working on the pickaxe, going to start launching there. All of the places. Red Wave America, thank you on Facebook. Media Equalizer, thank you for letting us have your Facebook feeds as well. Everybody listening, wherever you're listening at, share, like it. And again, the podcast is coming up here real soon for this show. It goes in the audio world, and I want you to like it. Until we meet again, may God bless you. May God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey. Peace.